Massive stone blocks fit together so perfectly, not even a blade of grass can slip between them. These ancient structures hold secrets of a forgotten intelligence. We are about to uncover 40 distinct signs of this brilliance hidden within old roads, temples, and cities. You will see how our ancestors mastered astronomy, defied earthquakes, and built sustainable cities with nothing but stone and ingenuity. How did they align pyramids with the stars using only their eyes? What engineering trick allowed their walls to dance during tremors without falling? This journey will permanently change how you view human history and our own potential for innovation. What do you believe is the greatest legacy our ancestors left behind in stone? Think of the world these architects inhabited. No steel beams, no power tools, no digital calculators, just stone, wood, bronze, and the immense power of human ingenuity. The master builders of Egypt, Rome, the Mayan cities, and the Indus Valley worked with what was locally available. Their knowledge was not stored in books but in living traditions, passed from one generation of artisans to the next. Every monumental structure, from the soaring pyramids to the graceful Roman aqueducts, was a response to a fundamental human need. They needed to honor their gods, manage their water, protect their communities, and assert their place in the cosmos. This was not abstract science for its own sake. It was applied intelligence born from countless hours watching the path of the sun, the flow of water, and the slow settling of the earth. They observed the world with a patience we can scarcely comprehend today. Their geometry was learned from stretching ropes and plotting shadows. Their understanding of physics came from trial and error, from watching what stood and what fell. A pyramid's perfect alignment to the stars was not a magical feat. It was the result of meticulous, long-term observation. An aqueduct's gentle, consistent slope across vast distances was a triumph of simple water-level technology and unwavering determination. These projects unified entire societies. They required the coordinated effort of thousands, all working toward a common vision that would outlive them all. When we look at the constraints they faced, their accomplishments shift from mysterious to magnificent. The limitations of their time become the very frame that highlights their brilliance. This foundational understanding of their world prepares us to see the subtle, specific signs of advanced thinking hidden in plain sight within their walls and roads. This intelligence was not a single flash of brilliance but a deep, systemic way of thinking. When we speak of intelligence in these ancient contexts, we are talking about something far broader than a clever building trick. It was a holistic mindset that combined systematic problem-solving with long-term planning, weaving together knowledge from many different fields. An architect did not just design a wall. He had to understand geology to choose a stable foundation, meteorology to anticipate rain and wind, and physics to calculate load and stress. This multidisciplinary approach is what created structures that served multiple purposes for generations. A temple was not merely a place of worship. Its alignment to the stars made it a celestial calendar, marking the solstices and guiding agricultural cycles. Its massive stone blocks, fitted without mortar, were engineered to sway during an earthquake, a dance of survival that required an intuitive grasp of seismic forces. This was intelligence applied to the challenge of permanence. It is evidenced most powerfully by sustainability, by structures that have endured for thousands of years. The Romans built aqueducts with such a precise, gentle slope that water flowed for miles under nothing but the force of gravity, a system so effective that some sections are still in use today. This hydrological expertise shows a profound understanding of resource management. They were not just moving water, they were securing the lifeblood of their cities for centuries to come. This ancient brilliance was also deeply adaptable. Builders used locally available materials, designing structures that worked with their local climate, not against it. In hot, arid regions, walls were thick to keep interiors cool. In rainy areas, complex drainage systems were integrated directly into the city's foundation. And perhaps most fascinatingly, this intelligence was often symbolic. Great buildings acted as libraries of stone, encoding cultural values, mathematical principles, and a cosmological understanding of humanity's place in the universe. The very layout of a city could be a map of the stars, a constant physical reminder of a connection between the earth and the heavens. Recognizing this broad definition is our key. It allows us to see that every perfectly cut stone and every aligned corridor is part of a much larger story, a story of a holistic intelligence that seamlessly blended practical necessity with a profound, enduring vision. That first sign of intelligence is literally set in stone. Look at the sheer faces of the Great Pyramid, where massive limestone blocks meet with gaps thinner than a credit card. To achieve this with simple copper tools and abrasive sand is a staggering feat. It speaks to a profound, hands-on knowledge of geometry and material behavior. The builders were not guessing. They used measuring cords soaked in water to prevent stretching, heavy plumb bobs to find true vertical lines, and simple water levels to establish a perfect horizontal plane across immense distances. This was not just about making things look neat. This precision was the very heart of their engineering. Each perfectly cut face ensured that the colossal weight above was distributed evenly, block by block, down to the bedrock below. It is this meticulous attention to detail that allowed these structures to stand for millennia. Move across the world to the high Andes, and you see this principle taken to another level entirely. The Inca built walls where stones of every conceivable shape and size fit together like a three-dimensional puzzle. Not a single drop of mortar holds them in place. The joints are so tight that you cannot force a piece of paper between them. This famous interlocking design was a brilliant seismic innovation. When an earthquake strikes, a rigid masonry wall will crack and collapse. But an Inca wall dances. The stones, locked together by their own complex shapes, shift and settle during the tremors, then fall perfectly back into place when the shaking stops. This is more than just craftsmanship. It is a deep, intuitive understanding of physics. It reveals a mind that could see the invisible forces of weight and motion and devise a way to make stone itself resilient. This mastery of practical mathematics and physics, achieved with such simple tools, does not just rival modern standards. In its elegance and durability, it sometimes surpasses them. That same mastery of stone allowed them to capture the light of the cosmos. The second profound sign of intelligence is etched not just in the ground, but in the very alignment of their structures with the heavens. Ancient builders transformed their monuments into colossal calendars and observatories, achieving a celestial synchronization that required generations of patient observation. At Newgrange in Ireland, a tomb older than the pyramids contains a narrow roof box passage. For just a few minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, a beam of sunlight pierces this tunnel, traveling 60 feet into the central chamber to illuminate its ancient darkness. This was not an accident. It was a meticulously engineered event, a dramatic union of architecture and astronomy. Across the sea in Egypt, the Temple of Karnak was oriented so that the rising midwinter sun would shine directly along its main axis, flooding the inner sanctuary with light and symbolically renewing the power of the pharaoh and the gods. These precise alignments demanded an advanced understanding of solar cycles and the Earth's slow wobble on its axis. How did they measure these angles with such accuracy over such vast distances? They used simple, powerful tools like the gnomon, a vertical stick whose shifting shadow length throughout the year could map the sun's path across the sky. This celestial knowledge was the bedrock of their society. Knowing the exact date of the solstice was not merely for ceremony. It was essential for agriculture, signaling the return of longer days and the time to plant crops. It structured their religious festivals and organized the entire civic year. These stone giants were both practical almanacs and profound spiritual statements, constant reminders that human life was intimately connected to the grand, orderly motion of the universe. This cosmic awareness, written in stone and sunlight, reveals a civilization that looked to the stars to guide their lives on Earth. This mastery over stone and sky finds its ultimate expression in the lifeblood of civilization, water. The third sign of intelligence flows through sophisticated management systems that turned scarcity into abundance. The Romans were the undisputed masters of this art, building aqueducts that marched across valleys and hills. Their secret was a gradient so consistently gentle that water traveled for dozens of miles powered by gravity alone. Achieving this required astonishingly precise surveying across rugged terrain. But they went beyond mere transport. They built massive sedimentation tanks where water would slow down, allowing impurities and silt to settle out before the cleaner water continued its journey. This was not just engineering, it was an early, deliberate form of urban water purification. Far to the east, in the heart of the Cambodian jungle, the builders of Angkor faced a different challenge entirely. They wrestled with the monsoon's extreme cycle of deluge and drought. Their response was a sprawling, engineered landscape of vast reservoirs and intricate canals. This network captured excess rainwater during the wet season, stored it in massive reservoirs, and then released it gradually to irrigate rice paddies throughout the dry months. This was a system of hydraulic equilibrium, designed to smooth out nature's violent fluctuations and guarantee food security for a massive population. These projects required more than just digging ditches. They demanded a deep, practical understanding of fluid dynamics, soil mechanics, and long-term environmental planning to prevent erosion and protect water quality from contamination. By harnessing water for drinking, sanitation, and agriculture, these ancient infrastructures did more than just quench thirst. They enabled the rise of great cities, demonstrating a powerful, forward-thinking model of sustainable resource management that placed public health and economic stability at its core. But water was not the only elemental force they had to master. In the Earth's most restless regions, ancient builders faced a constant, invisible threat, the sudden, violent shudder of an earthquake. Their response forms the fourth sign of intelligence, a brilliant application of flexible design that allowed their structures to dance with the planet's tremors rather than shatter against them. On the island of Crete, the Minoan palaces were not rigid stone fortresses. Their builders ingeniously incorporated horizontal timber beams directly into the stone masonry walls. Think of these wooden frames as a skeleton of flexibility within a stone body. When the ground shook, this wooden grid would bend and absorb the energy, preventing the rigid stone from cracking apart. It was a literal shock absorption system crafted from the most basic materials. This same principle of giving structures the ability to move finds its ultimate expression in the high Andes. Look closely at any Inca doorway or window, and you will see they are not perfect rectangles. They are trapezoids, wider at the bottom and narrower at the top. Their walls also subtly lean inward. This was not an aesthetic choice. It was a profound seismic innovation. A trapezoidal shape is inherently more stable than a rectangle. During an earthquake, the shifting forces are channeled downward through the slanted sides, distributing the energy and preventing the lintel, the stone across the top from collapsing. The inward-leaning walls create a lower center of gravity, making the entire structure less likely to topple over. This is architecture that understands physics on an intuitive level. And in Japan, home to some of the most seismic activity on Earth, the Horyuji Temple stands as a testament to this ancient wisdom. Built from wood, it uses a complex system of interlocking brackets known as Tokyo. These brackets are not nailed or glued. They are carefully carved to fit together, forming a flexible joint that allows the entire building to sway and shudder during a quake, dissipating the violent energy like a tree bending in a storm before settling peacefully back into place. These were not theoretical designs. They were solutions born from harsh experience, refined over generations through trial and error. This empirical knowledge of dynamics and material behavior showcases a truly proactive approach to disaster mitigation. They did not just build for the present, they engineered for a volatile future, creating resilient infrastructure that has withstood countless tremors across thousands of years. While their buildings could withstand earthquakes, their true genius is revealed in the very blueprint of their cities. The fifth sign of intelligence is found in urban planning, where entire societies were organized with foresight and precision. In the Indus Valley, over 4,000 years ago, the city of Mohenjo-Daro was not a chaotic sprawl. It was a masterpiece of deliberate design laid out on a strict grid pattern. Its main streets ran north-south and east-west, intersecting at perfect right angles to create orderly city blocks. This was not just for neatness. This geometric layout facilitated the flow of traffic and, more importantly, supported a sophisticated city-wide drainage system. Standardized kiln-fired bricks were used throughout the city, ensuring that every component fit into a larger, replicable system. This uniformity speaks of a powerful central authority, one capable of organizing labor and enforcing standards on a massive scale. The intelligence here is profoundly social. It is the intelligence of hygiene, of preventing disease by systematically carrying waste away from homes. It is the intelligence of commerce, creating predictable, accessible routes for trade. And it is the intelligence of community, designing a city that could grow in an orderly fashion without descending into the squalor that plagued so many later settlements. Centuries later and a continent away, the Romans perfected this concept with their own military efficiency. Every new Roman city was founded on two main arteries, the Cardo, running north-south, and the Decumanus, running east-west. Their intersection formed the heart of the city, the Forum, a public space for markets, politics, and social life. This grid was more than just a street plan. It was a system of zoning. Residential districts were separated from commercial and industrial areas. Public baths, theaters, and temples were placed in logical, accessible locations. This required advanced surveying skills to lay out these perfect lines over hills and valleys, but it also required a vision for the future. They were building not just for the current population, but for the city their grandchildren would inherit. This foresight created functional, scalable environments that promoted public health, economic vitality, and a strong sense of civic identity. The principles of hygiene, efficient land use, and community cohesion they established are not ancient relics. They are the very foundations of modern urban planning, a direct legacy of an intelligence that understood how to build a civilization, not just a collection of houses. That same urban order was built on a hidden foundation of numbers. The sixth sign of intelligence is written in the silent language of mathematics and geometry, principles that ancient builders embedded directly into the stones of their greatest monuments. Look at the Parthenon in Athens. Its facade is not a simple rectangle. Its proportions are governed by the golden ratio, a specific mathematical relationship where the whole is to the larger part as the larger part is to the smaller. This ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, is found repeatedly in nature, from the spiral of a nautilus shell to the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. By incorporating it into their architecture, the Greeks were not just building a temple, they were creating a visual harmony that resonated with a fundamental pattern of the natural world, a form that the human eye instinctively finds beautiful and balanced. This was mathematics as an art form. In Egypt, the Great Pyramid presents another mathematical marvel. The ratio of its perimeter to its original height is remarkably close to 2 times pi, the constant that defines the relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter. This was not a coincidence. It suggests the builders possessed a sophisticated, practical understanding of this irrational number long before it was formally defined by Greek mathematicians. This knowledge was not locked away in scrolls, it was applied. The Maya of Mesoamerica used a base 20 numeral system, complete with a symbol for zero, an incredibly advanced concept for its time. They used this system for tracking celestial cycles and for the precise calculations needed to construct their towering step pyramids. How did they ensure a pyramid was stable as it rose toward the sky? They used geometry. The slope of each side was a carefully calculated angle, a practical application of trigonometry that distributed the immense weight of the stone and prevented a catastrophic collapse. This was not abstract theory. It was the essential tool that turned a grand vision into a stable, physical reality. Builders used ropes and stakes to lay out perfect right angles on the ground, employing the 3-4-5 triangle principle to create square foundations. They calculated volumes to estimate the amount of stone needed for a project or the grain storage capacity of a silo. This integration of numbers into the physical world represents a profound cognitive leap. It marks the moment when humanity began to use mathematics not just for counting, but as a tool for creating enduring order, stability, and breathtaking beauty from the raw chaos of the natural world. The silent language of mathematics found its voice on a global scale, connecting continents through a seventh sign of intelligence, the integrated trade route. These were far more than simple dirt paths worn by caravan traffic. They were masterpieces of civil engineering, logistical planning, and international diplomacy. The legendary Silk Road was not a single road but a sprawling web of interconnected trails, punctuated by strategically placed caravanserais. These were fortified way stations that offered merchants and their animals a safe place to rest, secure their goods, and replenish supplies in the midst of hostile deserts and towering mountain ranges. This was a system designed for endurance, for moving people and ideas across impossible distances. In South America, the Inca engineered their own breathtaking version, a royal road system that stretched for over 25,000 miles through the rugged Andes. Their builders faced cliffs and canyons that would stop any ordinary project. Their answer was suspension bridges woven from native grasses, cables as thick as a man's body, capable of supporting entire processions high above roaring rivers. They carved tunnels directly through solid rock and built stone stairways up near vertical slopes. This network was the lifeline of an empire, with runners operating in a relay system to carry messages from one end to the other in a matter of days. The intelligence here was not just in the physical construction, but in the vision that recognized the immense value of connectivity. The Romans understood this too. Their famous roads were built like layered cakes, with a deep foundation of packed rubble, a middle layer of smaller stones, and a top surface of tightly fitted paving stones that curved to shed rainwater. This multi-layered design created a durable, all-weather surface that could support the relentless march of legions, and the heavy wheels of trade carts for century after century. These routes required advanced topographic surveys to find the most efficient grades and complex diplomatic agreements to ensure safe passage across countless borders. They connected the economies of the world, allowing spices from India to reach Rome and Chinese silk to dress European nobility. This was a form of ancient globalization, a visionary understanding that the strength of a civilization was not just in its monuments, but in the robust, resilient networks that tied it to the wider world. These stone networks and mathematical formulas were often the canvas for something even deeper. An eighth sign of intelligence is found in the stories these structures were built to tell. Ancient monuments were rarely just functional. They were narrative engines encoding entire cosmologies, histories, and myths into their very design. In Mesopotamia, the great ziggurats were not just temples. They were artificial sacred mountains, colossal stairways meant to connect the earthly realm with the domain of the gods. Their tiered, stepped forms physically represented a belief in a layered universe, a story of creation and divine hierarchy made visible for all to see. Centuries later in medieval Europe, Gothic cathedrals served a similar purpose for a largely illiterate population. Their soaring vaults lifted the eyes toward heaven, while every stained glass window and sculpted gargoyle acted as a page in a stone and glass Bible. The entire building was a teaching tool, illustrating complex theological stories through light and form. In Mesoamerica, this symbolic encoding reached a breathtaking synthesis. The Pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza is a celestial calendar made of stone. During the equinoxes, the play of sunlight and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the staircase, a direct representation of the feathered serpent god descending to earth. This was not a happy accident. It was a deliberate fusion of astronomy, architecture, and mythology, a moment where a cultural story became a tangible annual event. To achieve this, the architect had to be more than an engineer. They worked in close collaboration with priests, astronomers, and storytellers, translating abstract religious and philosophical concepts into a physical, three-dimensional language. This required a multimodal intelligence, a rare ability to weave together art, science, and spirituality into a single, coherent whole. These buildings were eternal libraries, their shelves made of stone and their books written in alignment and proportion. They preserved a civilization's deepest beliefs, ensuring that their identity and worldview would be communicated across generations, long after the spoken language had been forgotten. These great symbolic structures were built from the very earth upon which they stood. The ninth sign of intelligence is a quiet one, found not in grand celestial alignments but in the humble, sustainable sourcing of materials. Ancient builders possessed a profound ecological wisdom, choosing local resources and managing them with a long-term vision that prevented depletion. In the arid canyons of the American Southwest, the Anasazi constructed their breathtaking cliff dwellings directly into the sandstone cliffs. They used the very rock they excavated to create their bricks, mixing it with local clay and water to form a durable adobe. This was a zero-waste approach, minimizing the immense energy required to transport heavy materials across a vast, waterless landscape. Their entire settlement was a lesson in low-impact living, designed to work with the desert's harsh climate rather than conquer it. On the remote expanse of Easter Island, a society with incredibly limited resources demonstrated a different kind of adaptation. The iconic Moai statues were not carved from imported granite. They were painstakingly quarried from the soft volcanic tuff of the Rano Raraku crater, using hand-held stone tools called toki. This was a brilliant use of what was locally and abundantly available, a testament to human ingenuity flourishing within strict environmental constraints. Perhaps the most telling example comes from the Maya, who required vast quantities of lime plaster for their towering pyramids and smooth-walled cities. Producing lime requires burning limestone at extremely high temperatures, a process that traditionally consumes enormous amounts of wood. Rather than deforesting their entire realm, evidence suggests the Maya managed their woodlands, cultivating fast-growing trees and using specific fuel-efficient kiln designs to produce their plaster sustainably. This was not a society carelessly consuming its future. It was one making a calculated, long-term investment in its survival. This deep connection to the land, this understanding that human infrastructure must exist in harmony with nature to truly endure, underscores a timeless principle of balance. They met their own needs without compromising the health of the environment that sustained them, a lesson in ecological intelligence that resonates with remarkable urgency today. Sound itself became a tool in the ancient builders' hands. The 10th sign of intelligence is an invisible one, woven into the very air of sacred spaces through masterful acoustic engineering. In the underground labyrinth of the Hypogeum in Malta, carved over 5,000 years ago, certain small, oval chambers possess a shocking property. A deep voice spoken in one of these niches produces a powerful resonance, a vibration that seems to fill your entire body. This is not a random echo. The chambers are carved to amplify specific, very low frequencies, sounds that some researchers believe could induce altered states of consciousness during rituals. This was architecture designed not just to be seen, but to be felt, using vibration as a direct pathway to the spiritual. Above ground, the open-air theater of Epidaurus in Greece demonstrates the opposite end of this auditory genius. Its vast semicircle of stepped limestone seats acts as a natural sound filter. It perfectly muffles the low-frequency rumble of the crowd while simultaneously amplifying the higher frequencies of the human voice. An actor standing on the stage can speak in a conversational tone, and every syllable, every whisper will travel clearly to someone sitting in the very last row, over 100 feet away. This was not an accident of geology. It was the result of a profound, if intuitive, understanding of sound waves. The builders calculated the perfect angle and material for each seat, creating a surface that reflected sound upward instead of absorbing it. They were likely tuning their designs through a slow process of iteration, building, testing with live voices, and then refining the curves and angles. This auditory intelligence reveals a holistic view of human experience. A ritual in the Hypogeum was meant to be a visceral, overwhelming encounter, engaging the sense of hearing and touch to transcend the ordinary. A play in a Greek theater was a communal event where the architecture itself ensured that every citizen, regardless of their seat, was included in the story. These builders understood that the power of a space is not just in its visual grandeur, but in how it shapes the sounds that give it life, using physics to deepen spiritual connection and strengthen social bonds. The sheer scale of ancient ambition forced the creation of a new kind of intelligence, one that operated not with stone and rope, but with people and time. The 11th sign of intelligence is found in monumental logistics, the staggering ability to organize thousands of laborers for projects spanning generations. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza. This was not built by slaves toiling under a whip, but by a highly organized workforce, a society in miniature. Excavations of the worker villages reveal not squalid camps, but communities with standardized housing, massive bakeries producing thousands of loaves daily, and facilities for treating injuries. This was a planned settlement, a corporate campus for the ancient world, complete with a rotation system that allowed crews to work in shifts and return to their homes for part of the year. The intelligence here is profoundly administrative. It required forecasting the caloric needs of 20,000 people, managing supply chains for food, water, and tools across the entire nation, and delegating specialized roles from quarrymen to architects to cooks. This was social engineering on a colossal scale, a system designed to maintain morale and productivity for decades. The physical construction demanded its own innovations. How do you lift 2.3 million stone blocks, some weighing more than an elephant, to ever-increasing heights? The builders engineered massive ramp systems that spiraled around the growing structure, their slopes carefully calculated to allow teams to drag the blocks upward. They mastered lever and roller mechanics to move stones from the quarry to the site. This logistical genius is echoed in the Great Wall of China, a project that consumed centuries. Managing its construction across thousands of miles of mountainous terrain required a standardized system of communication, fort placement, and resource allocation that would challenge any modern general. The scale of these projects was a clear statement of political power, but it was also a testament to a civilization's ability to execute a long-term vision. It proves that ancient leaders possessed a sophisticated understanding of project management, capable of transforming a single, breathtaking idea into an enduring reality through the coordinated effort of an entire society. The same ingenuity that built for peace was equally formidable in the face of war. Defensive architecture stands as a 12th sign of intelligence, a chillingly practical application of strategy and psychology carved into stone and earth. From the concentric walls of Crusader castles to the imposing ramparts of ancient Chinese cities, these structures were masterclasses in controlled violence, designed to thwart invaders at every turn. Their features were not random additions but parts of an integrated system. A deep, water-filled moat forced attackers into a slow, vulnerable approach. Bastions, those angular projections from a wall, eliminated blind spots, allowing defenders to fire along the face of their own fortifications in a deadly crossfire. And from above, narrow openings known as murder holes let defenders drop rocks or pour boiling liquids onto anyone who managed to reach the gate. This was intelligence that used topography as a weapon. The legendary gates of Troy in modern-day Turkey were not simple openings. They were built with sharp, angled entrances, forcing any attacking force to slow its charge and expose its unshielded side to the defenders on the walls above. This was a deliberate manipulation of movement, turning the invaders' own momentum against them. High in the Andes, Machu Picchu's breathtaking location on a narrow mountain ridge was not just for the view. Its position provided natural cliffs on three sides, creating a formidable defensive perimeter that required minimal man-made walls. The intelligence here was as much psychological as it was physical. A towering, layered fortress was a deterrent, a clear message to any potential aggressor that the cost of attack would be unacceptably high. Creating these defenses required deep military insight and a grim understanding of siege warfare. Architects had to anticipate every tactic, from battering rams and siege towers to tunneling and starvation. The genius lay not in building an impenetrable wall, for none exists, but in creating a sequence of layered obstacles. Each layer would bleed an attacking army of its time, resources, and morale, making the final prize not worth the horrific cost. This was a brutal calculus of survival, balancing immense structural strength with a careful efficiency of resources to ensure a community could endure the most volatile of times. The most resilient defenses were often those that blended seamlessly into the landscape. This leads us to a 13th sign of intelligence, a profound integration with the natural world. Instead of flattening a hill or clearing a forest, ancient builders frequently chose to weave their structures into the existing terrain, creating a powerful synergy between human creation and the earth. In the desert kingdom of Petra, master craftsmen did not build upward with quarried stone. They carved downward, transforming the faces of rose-red sandstone cliffs into magnificent, ornate tombs. The mountain itself became the raw material, and the finished facades were a permanent part of the geologic tapestry, naturally insulated from the desert's extreme heat. On the other side of the world, the ancestral pueblones of Mesa Verde constructed entire villages tucked deep under the protective overhangs of canyon walls. These cliff dwellings were strategically placed to leverage the natural rock shelters, which shielded them from harsh sun, driving rain, and winter snow. The intelligence here was in the careful site selection. Builders sought out locations with existing water seeps and maximized solar exposure for warmth in the winter, while the massive stone canopy provided cooling shade in the summer. This was architecture that worked with the local climate, not against it, requiring no artificial energy for basic comfort. In Japan, this philosophy was elevated to a spiritual principle. Shinto shrines are often built around ancient trees or sacred rocks, with the man-made elements designed to frame and honor the natural ones. The boundary between the built environment and the wild is intentionally blurred, creating a space that feels both crafted and primordial. This approach reveals an ecological intelligence that went far beyond mere practicality. It was rooted in a worldview that saw humanity as a single part of a larger, living ecosystem. By minimizing their environmental footprint, these builders ensured their homes and holy places would endure with minimal disruption to the land that sustained them. This reverence for nature was not a romantic notion. It was a pragmatic survival strategy that provided tangible benefits, from passive temperature regulation to natural protection from the elements, proving that the most advanced design often involves listening to the wisdom of the land itself. That same reverence for the landscape unlocked a different kind of genius, one that transformed earth and fire into enduring stone. The 14th sign of intelligence is found in the very chemistry of their buildings, in the creation of early concrete and advanced binding materials. The Romans perfected a recipe that remains a marvel of material science. They mixed lime with a specific type of volcanic ash called pozzolana, creating a concrete that not only cured underwater but grew stronger and more resilient over centuries. This is the secret behind the Pantheon's immense, unsupported dome, a structure that has weathered 2,000 years of history. Its composition was no accident. It was the result of systematic experimentation, a chemical understanding that the volcanic ash contained compounds which, when mixed with lime and water, would trigger a powerful reaction, binding the aggregate into a monolithic, incredibly durable mass. This was a composite material that far outperformed its simple ingredients. Across the Atlantic, the Maya developed their own sophisticated version. They produced a lime plaster of exceptional quality by burning limestone in extremely hot kilns. The resulting plaster formed a hard, smooth, and water-resistant surface that protected their ornate stonework from the relentless jungle humidity and torrential rains. This required precise control over firing temperatures and slaking processes to achieve the desired chemical properties. In ancient India, builders displayed a similar innovative spirit, experimenting with organic binders. They mixed jaggery, a type of unrefined sugar, with lime and herbal extracts to create mortars with unique qualities, such as increased flexibility or resistance to saltwater erosion. The intelligence here is profound yet practical. It lies in the meticulous observation of natural materials, the patient testing of different mixtures, and the empirical discovery of formulas that yielded specific results. They sought strength but also flexibility to withstand ground settlement and water resistance to defy the elements. This mastery of materials was the true enabler of architectural ambition. It allowed the Romans to span vast spaces with fluid concrete domes, and the Maya to coat their pyramids in brilliant, enduring stucco. By transforming local, humble substances into engineered composites, these ancient chemists laid the literal foundation for the built world we know today. These great structures did more than just touch the sky, they guided entire journeys across the planet. A 15th sign of intelligence shines from ancient lighthouses, stone circles, and star compass stones that served as precise navigational and geodetic markers. They turned the landscape itself into a map and a guide. The legendary Pharos of Alexandria was more than a marvel of height. Its great mirror, possibly polished bronze, reflected the light of a massive fire by night, creating a beacon visible for 30 miles out to sea. By day, it likely produced a column of smoke. For Mediterranean sailors, this was the difference between a safe harbor and a shipwreck on the Nile's shifting delta. It was a piece of permanent, intelligent infrastructure that actively called out to the world, guaranteeing the safe flow of trade and ideas into one of the ancient world's greatest cities. Far to the north, the monolithic circle of Stonehenge may have served a similar terrestrial purpose. The outlying heel stone aligns perfectly with the summer solstice sunrise. For ancient travelers moving across the Salisbury Plain, this alignment could have acted as a colossal calendar marker, confirming the time of year and orienting them on their journey. This concept of a built environment as a guide reaches its apex in the vast Pacific. On tiny, low-lying atolls, Polynesian navigators used stone platforms and carefully aligned coral slabs as physical star compasses. These stones were sightlines permanently fixed to the horizon, marking the rising and setting points of key stars and constellations. This was a celestial map carved into the Earth itself. To use these markers required a breathtaking synthesis of knowledge. Builders needed precise geographic positioning, a deep understanding of astronomy for celestial alignment, and in the case of the Polynesians, an intimate familiarity with ocean currents and swell patterns. This was not isolated genius, it was a global consciousness made manifest in stone. A lighthouse in Egypt connected to trade routes from Rome to India. A stone circle in England provided a fixed point in a nomadic landscape. A star compass on a remote island enabled the greatest maritime migration in human history. These structures were the anchors of a network, multifunctional hubs that facilitated exploration, trade, and the profound cultural connections that arise when distant peoples are no longer isolated. They were permanent, intelligent beacons in a vast and uncertain world, proving that ancient visionaries saw their buildings not just as local monuments, but as active participants in a connected human story. Even the air itself could be sculpted by ancient hands. A 16th sign of intelligence is written in the very temperature of a room, a mastery of thermal regulation that created comfortable living spaces centuries before modern heating and cooling. In the scorching deserts of Persia, architects designed elegant wind catchers, tall, chimney-like towers that rose above city rooftops. These structures captured the slightest prevailing breeze, funneling it downward into the heart of the home below. As the cool, dense air sank, it would push the warmer, stagnant air out through another opening, creating a constant, gentle circulation that transformed a stifling interior into an oasis of coolness. This was not just a clever trick, it was a practical application of convection, using the natural behavior of air to do the work of an air conditioner without any need for power. Meanwhile, in the chilly winters of the Roman Empire, a different system thrived beneath the marble floors of wealthy villas. The hypocaust was an ingenious underfloor heating system. Slaves would tend a furnace that sent hot air and smoke through a network of hollow spaces beneath the floor, supported by rows of brick pillars. The heat would then rise, warming the entire floor slab above, which acted as a massive thermal radiator, gently heating the rooms for hours. This required a precise understanding of how heat moves and how to construct a safe, efficient flue system to vent the gases. In the American Southwest, the ancestral Puebloans used the very substance of their homes to achieve a similar balance. Their pueblo buildings were constructed with incredibly thick adobe walls. These walls acted as a thermal battery. During the hot desert day, they would slowly absorb heat, keeping the interior spaces cool and shaded. Then, as the frigid night fell, the stored heat would gradually radiate back into the living quarters, providing a natural, steady warmth until morning. All of these systems shared a common, brilliant thread. They did not fight the local climate. They worked with it, leveraging predictable solar angles, seasonal wind patterns, and the inherent properties of local materials like stone, clay, and earth. This passive climate control represents one of the earliest and most effective forms of green architecture. It was a design philosophy rooted in efficiency and human well-being, creating harmonious environments that provided year-round comfort from nothing but the intelligent application of natural principles. This foresight for public health brings us to the 17th sign, a quiet revolution in sanitation that flowed beneath the very streets of ancient cities. In the meticulously planned avenues of Mohenjo-Daro, every house was connected to a covered, city-wide drainage system. From individual bathrooms, wastewater was channeled into brick-lined sewers running beneath the main avenues, all designed with a careful slope to ensure everything kept moving. These were not open gutters. They were covered to contain odors and prevent contamination, with periodic manholes for maintenance access. This was not a luxury for the elite. It was a standardized civic feature, a clear indication that the entire society understood the fundamental link between hygiene and collective well-being. Centuries later, Rome would build on this principle with imperial scale. The Cloaca Maxima began as an open canal but was later vaulted over, becoming one of the world's first great sewer systems. It channeled waste and excess water from the city's baths and latrines directly into the Tiber River. Even more telling were the public latrines, often beautiful, marble-lined rooms with rows of seats. Beneath them, a constant stream of flowing water from the aqueduct swept waste away into the sewers below. Sponges on sticks soaked in salt water served as communal toilet paper, a system that, while strange to us, was part of a coordinated approach to urban cleanliness. The intelligence here was both practical and profoundly medical. It required a working knowledge of hydraulics to design channels that would not clog, and an understanding of urban density to manage the immense volume of waste produced by thousands of people living in close quarters. But more than that, it reveals an empirical grasp of epidemiology. These ancient engineers may not have known about germs, but they had observed over generations that fouled water and accumulated waste led to disease and plague. By systematically removing that waste from the human environment, they were actively fighting illness. This proactive infrastructure was a primary reason these civilizations could sustain such dense urban populations. It reduced mortality rates from waterborne diseases, allowing cities to grow beyond what was previously possible. This was not merely about civic convenience. It was a monumental achievement in preventive medicine, a testament to a civilization's commitment to the health of its people, all engineered with stone, water, and brilliant, forward-thinking logic. Hidden within the very proportions of a temple lies a silent language of numbers. The 18th sign of intelligence is a sacred geometry, a belief that mathematical ratios could bridge the gap between the earthly and the divine. This was more than just decoration. It was a way of encoding the entire cosmos into the footprint of a building. Look at the layout of a traditional Hindu temple. It is designed as a mandala, a complex geometric diagram representing the universe. Every concentric square, every gateway, corresponds to a different spiritual plane, guiding the worshipper on a symbolic journey from the outer world of illusion to the inner sanctum of ultimate truth. The intelligence here is dual. On a practical level, this symmetrical, nested design created a structure of immense stability, its balanced proportions naturally resisting lateral forces. But its true purpose was metaphysical. It was a spiritual map made of stone. This principle echoes across the world at Teotihuacan. The Pyramid of the Sun was not simply piled high. Its base perimeter bears a significant ratio to its original height, a mathematical relationship that some researchers suggest mirrors the proportions of the solar system or sacred numerical constants. To achieve this, the architects had to be both master surveyors and profound philosophers. They were translating abstract cosmological principles into tangible, physical form. They used ropes and pegs to lay out perfect squares and circles on the ground, employing ratios like the golden mean, a proportion found in the spiral of a galaxy and the curve of a seashell. By embedding these natural patterns into their architecture, they were creating a resonance. A space built with these harmonies felt inherently right, beautiful, and awe-inspiring because it reflected the underlying order of creation itself. This was not a random act of building. It was a deliberate act of world-making. The structure became a constant physical reminder of a cultural worldview, reinforcing the connection between the community, their gods, and the mathematical fabric of the universe every time a person entered its shadow. These spaces were the beating heart of the ancient city, where the full spectrum of human life would converge. In the Athenian agora, the same open square where a philosopher like Socrates might debate the nature of justice would, hours later, be filled with the stalls of merchants selling olive oil and pottery. This was not a chaotic free-for-all. It was a meticulously planned environment. Surrounding porticos provided shaded colonnades for people to meet and talk protected from the sun, while a designated speaker's platform, the bema, gave a focal point for political announcements. The Romans refined this concept in their forums, creating a central plaza flanked by a basilica for legal proceedings, a temple for worship, and often a public library. The intelligence here was profoundly social. It was an understanding that a city thrives on the spontaneous interactions of its citizens, and that by bringing commerce, governance, and culture into a single, walkable district, you create a powerful engine for civic life. This required a deep, intuitive grasp of human behavior and crowd dynamics. Planners had to design for flow, ensuring that a religious procession could move through the space without disrupting the daily market, and that the acoustics of a performance space were separate enough from a quiet temple courtyard. The Mayan plazas of Tikal or Copan served a similar vital purpose. Their vast, open surfaces, bounded by towering pyramids and royal palaces, were stages for grand ceremonial ball games that held deep religious significance. Yet these same plazas also functioned as bustling marketplaces and communal gathering spots. This multifunctionality was the key to their resilience. A space that served only one purpose could become a ghost town when that activity ceased, but a plaza that hosted markets by day, festivals by night, and political assemblies in between was perpetually alive, adapting to the rhythm of the hours and the seasons. This design philosophy strengthened the very fabric of society. It encouraged citizens from all walks of life to participate in the shared experience of city life, fostering a sense of common identity and belonging that was as crucial to the survival of a civilization as any wall or aqueduct. This understanding that a community is built not just of stone but of shared spaces and common ground reveals a planning intelligence focused on the human experience itself. Stone could only accomplish so much on its own. For structures that truly pushed the limits of height and stability, ancient builders turned to a 20th sign of intelligence, a sophisticated partnership between rock and metal. Deep within the masonry of the Parthenon, you will find the ghosts of iron clamps. These U-shaped metal clamps were set in molten lead and fitted into precisely carved channels, binding adjacent marble blocks together. This was not just glue, it was a system of tensile strength, counteracting the natural forces that would otherwise pull the stones apart over centuries. The lead sleeve was a stroke of genius in itself, preventing the iron from rusting and expanding, which would have cracked the very stone it was meant to secure. Across the Mediterranean, Egyptian obelisks relied on bronze dowels. These metal pins were essentially giant staples, locking the colossal stone monoliths to their foundations and to each other. Creating these metal components was an immense undertaking in its own right. It required a complete supply chain, from mining ore to smelting it in high-temperature furnaces, and finally forging it into specific, load-bearing shapes. This demanded a practical understanding of metallurgy, knowing how to alloy copper with tin to create a stronger bronze, or how to work iron to avoid brittle spots. The intelligence here is in the hybrid approach. These artisans were not loyal to a single material. They understood the inherent limitations of stone, which is incredibly strong under compression but weak under tension when it is being pulled or bent. Metal provided that missing tensile strength. By thoughtfully combining the crushing mass of stone with the flexible, binding power of metal, they created a composite material system far more resilient than either component alone. This allowed them to design taller, more slender columns, wider roof spans, and more daring architectural forms, knowing that hidden within the joints, metal ligaments were lending their silent, enduring strength. This was innovation born from a deep comprehension of material properties, a brilliant fusion of the Earth's oldest building block with humanity's newest technology. The stone circles and pyramid alignments were not just static calendars. A 21st sign of intelligence emerges in the creation of dynamic instruments, complex machines designed not only to mark the sky but to predict its most dramatic events. These were the ancient world's supercomputers, built to forecast eclipses, solstices, and planetary cycles with astonishing accuracy. Recovered from a shipwreck, the Antikythera mechanism is a stunning artifact of bronze gears and precise dials. This hand-cranked device was an analog computer that could model the positions of the sun, moon, and known planets, even predicting lunar and solar eclipses years in advance. Its intricate gear trains replicated the complex, lopsided orbits of celestial bodies, a mechanical representation of the cosmos that required a deep, mathematical understanding of orbital periods. Far across the world, the Maya built their own predictive engines in stone. The Caracol Observatory at Chichen Itza is a tower riddled with narrow, strategically placed windows and sightlines. These openings were not for ventilation. They were precisely aligned to track the path of Venus, a planet of immense importance in Maya cosmology. Priest astronomers would watch as the brilliant point of light appeared in a specific window, marking the beginning of its cycle, which they had calculated with extraordinary precision. This was not casual stargazing. It was a rigorous scientific process that demanded generations of continuous observation, meticulous record-keeping on bark paper codices, and the development of sophisticated mathematical models to account for tiny variations in planetary motion. The intelligence here is profoundly practical. Knowing when an eclipse would occur was not just a mystical feat. It was a tool for governance, allowing rulers to demonstrate their divine connection by foretelling celestial omens. It was essential for agriculture, as the cycles of Venus were intricately linked to the timing of the rainy season and the planting of maize. This predictive capability transformed a society's relationship with the cosmos from one of fearful reaction to one of empowered anticipation. They reduced the uncertainty of the heavens into a known, manageable schedule, reinforcing their place in the universe not through superstition, but through the steady, accumulating power of empirical science. The spaces these builders created reached beyond the physical to touch the human mind itself. A 22nd sign of intelligence is found in the deliberate psychological impact of architectural design, where structures were engineered to evoke specific emotions and control behavior. Ancient architects were masters of mood, using scale, light, and layout as tools to shape the inner experience of every person who entered their domains. Consider the long, narrow, and steeply ascending passageway inside the Great Pyramid. This was not merely a functional corridor. Its claustrophobic climb, forcing a person to bend and struggle upward in near darkness, was designed to induce a profound sense of awe, disorientation, and humility. By the time an initiate reached the vast, silent expanse of the king's chamber, their ordinary sense of self had been stripped away, leaving them psychologically primed for a powerful spiritual encounter. This was architecture as a guided journey for the soul. Centuries later, the builders of Gothic cathedrals pursued a similar goal with opposite means. Instead of a constricting darkness, they used soaring vertical lines and walls of stained glass to dissolve the ceiling into a canopy of light and color. The intention was to make the human spirit feel lifted, to inspire a sense of transcendence and connection with the divine. The architecture itself preached a sermon, telling the worshipper to look upward and aspire to heaven. This manipulation of space could also serve more earthly powers. The legendary palace of Knossos on Crete was a sprawling, labyrinthine complex of corridors and rooms. Its intentional lack of a single, clear axis created a feeling of mystery and confusion. For those who lived there, this design reinforced the authority of the ruler, the only one who supposedly knew the secret of the maze. It was a physical manifestation of control, using disorientation to make the inhabitant feel dependent and powerless without guidance. This psychological intelligence, whether intuitive or carefully studied, reveals a deep understanding of human perception. It shows that these builders knew how to use immense scale to evoke humility, filtered light to create reverence, and confusing layouts to generate uncertainty. By crafting environments that directly shaped mental states, they turned stone and mortar into active participants in cultural storytelling, reinforcing social hierarchies and spiritual beliefs not through force, but through the subtle, immersive power of designed experience. This foresight for psychological space was matched by an equally profound understanding of the living earth. Ancient builders did not see the ground as a permanent, stable stage. They recognized it as a dynamic system, and their 23rd sign of intelligence was a deliberate adaptation to long-term geological and hydrological change. The Maya, for instance, did not simply endure the violent cycle of monsoon rains and dry seasons. They engineered a landscape of canals and raised fields throughout cities like Tikal and Caracol. These were not just for transport. The canals managed seasonal flooding, channeling excess water away from city centers and plazas, while simultaneously creating fertile silt deposits that nourished their agriculture. This was a system designed for flux, one that turned a potential disaster into a productive resource. A similar logic of working with a shifting environment is found millennia earlier at Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley. The entire city was built on massive, man-made platforms of mud, brick, and earth, raising its crucial infrastructure and residential districts high above the floodplain of the mighty Indus River. This was not a reaction to a single flood. It was a planned, foundational adaptation to the predictable, annual cycle of silt deposition and high water, ensuring the city's survival and cleanliness for centuries. Perhaps the most famous example of this resilient thinking is Venice. Its first settlers, facing invasion from the mainland, chose the apparent instability of a lagoon. They drove thousands of wooden piles deep into the compacted clay and sand, building their foundations upon these submerged forests. They understood the tidal nature of their home, constructing with the certainty of water level changes rather than against it. The intelligence required for such adaptations was immense. It began with geological surveys, an understanding of soil composition and stability. It demanded hydrological modeling, a practical knowledge of how water flows, erodes, and deposits sediment over seasons and years. Most of all, it required a foresight that stretched across generations, a planning horizon that considered the slow, powerful forces of nature as a fundamental design parameter. This was not building for a static world. It was building for a world in motion, a philosophy of resilience that allowed communities to thrive within dynamic, often challenging landscapes. In an era of modern climate change, this ancient wisdom speaks with a powerful and urgent voice, reminding us that the most enduring intelligence is one that plans for change itself. The relentless passage of time was captured in stone and shadow. A 24th sign of intelligence emerges where architecture itself becomes a clock, encoding complex calendrical systems into the very fabric of public monuments. At Chichen Itza, the Pyramid of El Castillo is a masterwork of this principle. Its 4 stairways each have 91 steps, which, added to the shared platform at the top, equals 365, a step for every day of the solar year. But the true spectacle occurs during the equinoxes. As the sun sets, the play of light and shadow against the step terraces creates a series of triangular shapes that connect from the top platform down to giant serpent heads at the base. The effect is a massive, undulating serpent of shadow slithering down the side of the pyramid, a dramatic representation of the feathered serpent god Kukulkan descending to Earth. This was not just a beautiful optical illusion. It was a precise public announcement of a pivotal moment in the agricultural cycle, marking a time of balance between light and dark. Across the Atlantic, the monolithic circle of Stonehenge performs a similar function on a grander, more enduring scale. Its central axis is aligned to the summer solstice sunrise, so that on the longest day of the year, the sun rises directly over the heel stone and casts its beams into the heart of the circle. Other stones and apertures within the complex track the more complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon, predicting lunar eclipses. To achieve this, its builders needed generations of patient observation, meticulously recording the subtle shifts in the sun's and moon's rising points on the horizon. The intelligence here is in the translation of an abstract, invisible force into a tangible, communal experience. They made time something you could see and stand within. By integrating these celestial clocks into the most prominent structures in the landscape, they wove the cosmos into daily life. A farmer did not need a personal calendar. He could see the serpent descend and know it was time to prepare the fields. A community could gather at Stonehenge and participate in the cosmic drama of the turning year. This fusion of time and space ensured that every vital activity, from planting and harvest to religious festivals and governance, moved in a synchronized rhythm. It was a system that guaranteed both practical efficiency and profound cultural continuity, binding a society together under the shared, predictable clock of the heavens. They even accounted for the imperfections of the human eye. A 25th sign of intelligence lies in the subtle optical illusions and perspective corrections master builders integrated into their design. They understood that mathematical perfection did not always look perfect to a person standing on the ground. Look at a Greek temple like the Parthenon. Its majestic columns are not straight lines from bottom to top. They feature a gentle swelling in the middle, a technique called intosses. If they were built perfectly straight, the human eye would perceive them as curving inward, creating a weak, spindly appearance. That subtle bulge makes them look powerfully straight and robust from a distance. This was not a structural necessity, it was a perceptual one. The same temple's floor is another marvel of visual trickery. It curves upward ever so slightly toward the center. If it were truly flat, the vast expanse of stone would appear to sag in the middle to someone viewing it from the end of the platform. That imperceptible rise creates the flawless illusion of perfect flatness. How did they discover these refinements? It was likely a slow process of observation and model making, watching how light fell on small-scale prototypes and learning how the eye interprets grand scales. This represents a profound cognitive leap. It is the intelligence of prioritizing human experience over raw, measurable geometry. They were not just building for the plumb line. They were building for the person who would stand in its shadow, ensuring that the emotional impact of the structure, its feeling of power, balance, and grace was preserved. This sophisticated interplay between reality and appearance reveals a mind that could think in multiple dimensions at once, blending the cold logic of mathematics with the warm, subjective truth of human perception. The ground plan of a city could be a powerful tool for shaping the human heart. A 26th sign of intelligence is found in deliberate social engineering, where infrastructure was designed to reinforce community cohesion and encode cultural values directly into the landscape. Consider the great ziggurats of Mesopotamia. These stepped pyramids were more than temples. They were towering statements of social order. By placing the priestly class high above the common populace on man-made mountains, the architecture physically manifested a spiritual and political hierarchy. Everyone, everywhere in the city could look up and see the literal elevation of their leaders, a constant, silent reminder of their place in a divinely sanctioned structure. This was not merely about showing power. It was about creating a stable, predictable society where everyone understood their role, thereby minimizing social friction and conflict. A more intricate example unfolds in the Inca capital of Cusco. The city was the center of the sex system, a complex web of imaginary lines that radiated outward like spokes from a wheel. Each line was aligned with sacred shrines and natural landmarks, and each was the responsibility of a specific family or clan. This system organized the entire empire's ritual calendar, its labor obligations, and its social structure. The physical layout of the land mapped by these lines became an administrative and spiritual guide for daily life. The genius here was anthropological. It required a deep, intuitive understanding of how people form communities, how they relate to authority, and what symbols bind them together. The builders were not just moving earth and stone. They were weaving the very fabric of society, using the environment to promote a shared identity and a sense of collective purpose. This was infrastructure serving the most complex system of all, human society itself, ensuring that the city was not just a place to live, but a living embodiment of order and unity. The arch is a rebellion against gravity itself. That simple curved form, perfected by the Romans, unlocked the 27th sign of intelligence, a mastery of load distribution that transformed the ancient skyline. Before the arch, spanning a wide space meant using a massive, heavy lintel, a horizontal beam that could crack under its own weight. The arch solved this with elegant physics. Each stone in the curved structure, called a voussoir, presses against its neighbors. This pressure is channeled downward and outward along the curve, creating a powerful thrust that is then caught and supported by heavy piers or walls on either side. The weight of the entire span is distributed efficiently along these curved lines, minimizing the stress on any single point. This principle allowed Roman engineers to stack arches into massive aqueducts that marched across valleys, and to evolve the form into the barrel vault and the magnificent dome. The Pantheon's vast, unsupported dome remains the world's largest of its kind, a testament to this genius. Its builders used a progressively lighter concrete mix as the dome rose, and its thick base contains hidden relieving arches that act like a skeletal system, channeling the immense forces safely down to the ground. This was not guesswork. It was the result of generations of empirical testing, of watching which arches stood and which collapsed, slowly building an intuitive, yet incredibly accurate, understanding of structural mechanics. This knowledge of how forces travel and can be redirected created grand, uninterrupted interiors for public baths and basilicas, and it enabled durable, efficient bridges that strengthened the very bones of an empire. The enduring legacy of the arch is all around us, a silent reminder that ancient builders grasped the fundamental principles of physics that still underpin every major structure we build today. Even a simple drain pipe could become a masterpiece. The 28th sign of intelligence is this seamless integration of art and functionality, where beauty was never an afterthought but a vital component of the design itself. Look up at the rain-swept heights of a Gothic cathedral, and you will find stone gargoyles snarling down from the parapets. These fantastical creatures were far more than decoration. They were ingenious waterspouts, carved with long, open mouths that projected rainwater away from the fragile masonry walls, protecting the building from the slow decay of erosion. The art was the machine. This same principle animated the great temples of Egypt. Their massive columns were not plain pillars. They were shaped like bundles of papyrus or lotus flowers, their fluted surfaces mimicking the stems of plants. This was not merely symbolic. The complex, bundled design of these column capitals actually helped distribute the immense weight of the stone roof above more effectively than a simple slab would. The aesthetic choice was also a structural one. Creating this fusion required a deep collaboration between the artisan, who understood form and symbolism, and the master builder, who understood load and stress. They spoke a common language of stone, each informing the other's work. The intelligence here is profound. It recognizes that human beings are not purely practical creatures. We crave meaning and beauty in our environment. By embedding artistry directly into a drain spout, a column, or a door handle, these cultures acknowledge this fundamental need. They transformed mundane infrastructure into a source of daily inspiration. A public fountain was not just for drinking, it was a sculptural centerpiece that told a myth. A city gate was not just for defense, its carved reliefs recounted the history of the king who built it. This approach educated the illiterate, inspired the citizen, and elevated the human spirit by making every interaction with the built world an encounter with culture. It was a philosophy that refused to separate the necessary from the beautiful, understanding that a society is truly advanced when its functionality is dressed in grace. The stones themselves were chosen for eternity. This 29th sign of intelligence is a testament to foresight, where the very selection of granite, basalt, or marble reveals a deep understanding of geological time. Builders did not simply use the nearest rock. They made deliberate choices, weighing a material's resistance to weathering, its hardness against erosion, and its ability to resist biological decay from lichen and roots. The Olmecs of ancient Mexico provide a stunning example. They carved their colossal stone heads from incredibly dense basalt, a volcanic rock renowned for its toughness. But the quarries were miles away from their ceremonial centers, separated by swamps and rough terrain. Transporting these multi-ton monoliths was a Herculean logistical feat, one they willingly undertook because they knew basalt would endure the relentless tropical rains and humid jungle air for thousands of years. The intelligence here was not just in the carving, but in the entire supply chain, from identifying the right geological formation to developing the methods to move it. In Egypt, this logic was applied on a civilization-defining scale. The outer casing of the Great Pyramid was originally made from highly polished Chora limestone, chosen for its smooth, bright white finish that would gleam under the sun. For the inner chambers and sarcophagi, however, they used granite from Aswan, a stone so hard that it would have required countless hours of labor with stone tools and abrasive sand to shape. Why use such a difficult material? Because granite is nearly impervious to compression and wear. They were building for the afterlife, and they chose the most durable substance their world knew to protect the pharaoh's eternal resting place. This material science required practical geology, the knowledge to identify the best quarries and predict how a stone would behave over centuries. It demanded advanced quarrying techniques to extract massive blocks without shattering them, and sophisticated logistics to move these immense weights across rivers and deserts. This was an investment in legacy. By prioritizing endurance, these cultures were consciously communicating with the future. They were ensuring that their values, their achievements, and their very identity would not be erased by time. In a transient world, their commitment to permanence stands as a profound declaration of their intelligence and their unwavering belief in what they had built. True north was not just a direction but a sacred anchor. The 30th sign of intelligence is this universal drive to align the human world with the cosmic order through symbolic orientation to the cardinal directions. The Great Pyramid of Giza presents perhaps the most famous example. Its base sides aligned to true north with an error of less than 1/15 of a single degree. To achieve such precision without a magnetic compass required a profound understanding of the stars, likely using the slow, patient rotation of circumpolar stars to find that fixed point in the sky around which the entire heavens seemed to turn. This was not merely a technical achievement, it was a spiritual declaration grounding the pharaoh's eternal resting place in the unchanging fabric of the cosmos. On the other side of the world, Chinese imperial palaces were meticulously oriented to face directly south. This alignment was deeply rooted in cosmological principles and the philosophy of Feng Shui, where south was the most auspicious direction, associated with warmth, light, and positive energy. But this symbolic choice yielded immense practical benefits. A south-facing orientation maximized solar gain during the winter months, passively warming the vast halls and courtyards while providing shade and cooler conditions in the summer. It also positioned the main structures to receive the gentle, benevolent winds and to shield against the harsh northern gusts. This merging of spiritual symbolism with environmental intelligence reveals a holistic worldview. The builders used simple yet effective tools like the gnomon, a vertical pole whose shadow could trace a perfect east-west line at the equinoxes when day and night are of equal length. By marking the shadow's tip at sunrise and sunset, they could create a precise arc with true north and south found at its midpoint. This directional awareness transformed architecture into a mediator between realms. A temple aligned to the cardinal points was a physical model of the universe, a constant reminder that human life unfolded within a larger, orderly system. It brought the cosmos down to earth, creating a built environment that was not just functional but deeply meaningful. a place where every sunrise through an eastern gate or every shadow along a northern wall reinforced a culture's understanding of its place in the grand design. Moving a mountain one stone at a time demanded more than just muscle. The 31st sign of intelligence is a triumph of logistics and physics, found in the monumental effort of transporting colossal stones across impossible distances. Think of the Easter Island moai, those brooding giants carved from volcanic rock. Each statue, weighing many tons, had to be moved nearly a dozen miles from the quarry to its final coastal platform. The islanders likely used a combination of wooden sledges and rollers, rocking the statues forward in a painstaking, deliberate walk. This was not brute force. It was a carefully choreographed dance, a system that minimized friction and maximized the limited human power available. In Egypt, the challenge was even greater. How do you move a 1,000-ton obelisk down the Nile? The solution was a masterpiece of buoyancy and leverage. They would load the giant stone onto a specially built barge, a vessel so massive it was itself a feat of engineering. During the annual flood, when the river was high and the current strong, they would float this incredible cargo to its destination. The intelligence here is in the seamless coordination of natural cycles with human ingenuity. On land, the construction of the Great Pyramids required a different kind of innovation. Massive ramp systems built from packed earth and rubble spiraled around the growing structure. Teams of laborers pulling on ropes would drag stone blocks weighing several tons up these engineered slopes. The precise angle of the ramp was critical. Too steep and the block becomes impossible to pull. Too shallow and the ramp itself becomes an impossibly long and wasteful project. This was applied physics, a practical understanding of inclined planes and the coefficient of friction, refined through generations of trial and error. These projects were exercises in risk management. A single mistake, a snapped rope or a failed roller, could mean catastrophe, destroying a year's work and costing lives. The techniques they developed, from lubricating sled paths with water to using levers to make fine adjustments, were all aimed at optimizing energy and ensuring safety. This logistical prowess reveals a society that could think in systems. It required forecasting the labor and materials needed for the ramps, organizing food and water for the workers, and maintaining morale for a project that would outlive everyone involved. They were solving complex transportation puzzles with nothing but coordination, innovation, and a determined vision of the future they were building together. That same vision for order was built on a universal language of numbers. A 32nd sign of intelligence shines through the ancient world's use of standardized units of measurement. From the Egyptian royal cubit to the Roman foot, builders did not rely on arbitrary sticks or personal guesses. They developed and enforced consistent measurement systems that became the bedrock of their architectural ambition. The Egyptian cubit, for instance, was typically the length of a man's forearm from elbow to fingertip, a unit that was then immortalized in master rods made of stone. This was a brilliant fusion of the human body with abstract mathematics, creating a tool that any worker could understand and replicate. The intelligence, however, went far deeper than a simple stick. To ensure consistency across an entire kingdom, these master cubits were kept in temples, and copies were distributed to work sites. This meant that a block of stone quarried 100 miles up the Nile would fit perfectly into a wall being constructed near the capital. This standardization was the key to large-scale, collaborative projects. It allowed for interchangeable parts and precise replication. Think of 1,000 teams of stonemasons all carving blocks for a single pyramid. Without a shared, unwavering standard, the result would have been chaos, a pile of mismatched stones that could never lock together. but with the qubit, every block was a predictable component in a colossal puzzle. This metrological genius reduced errors to a minimum and dramatically improved efficiency. It meant that a master architect could draw a plan in one location, and teams across the country could execute it with perfect confidence. The Romans perfected this system with their own foot and pace, allowing their legions to build identical forts from Britain to Syria. This was more than just a tool for building. It was a profound move towards systematic thinking. By creating and applying these abstract measures, ancient cultures were imposing a layer of human order onto the raw chaos of the natural world. They were replacing guesswork with predictability, transforming the monumental task of construction from an artistic gamble into a manageable, repeatable science. This invisible framework of numbers is what truly held their stone empires together. These principles of health were literally built into the cityscape. The 33rd sign of intelligence is found in infrastructures intentionally designed for healing, where architecture itself became a form of medicine. In ancient Greece, the Asclepia were not simple hospitals. They were sprawling wellness sanctuaries, carefully placed near sacred springs and in serene, natural settings. Their design was a prescription for the whole person. Patients would first undergo purification through hydrotherapy, bathing in waters chosen for their mineral content. They would then move to an abaton, a special hall for dream incubation. Here, in a space designed for quiet and spiritual focus, they would sleep, believing the god Asclepius would visit them in their dreams to reveal a diagnosis or cure. The entire complex included gardens for growing medicinal herbs, turning the environment into an active pharmacy. This required a sophisticated, holistic knowledge that wove together anatomy, botany, and a profound understanding of the human psyche. The Romans scaled this concept into a social institution. Their public baths were architectural marvels of wellness. A citizen would progress through a series of rooms, each with a different temperature and purpose, from the cold frigidarium to the warm tepidarium and the hot coldarium. This thermal therapy, combined with spaces for exercise, massage, and most importantly, socialization, addressed both physical and mental well-being. The intelligence here is a complete inversion of how we often view infrastructure. It was not merely functional or defensive, it was therapeutic. These cultures understood that health was not just the absence of disease, but a positive state to be actively cultivated. The design of a bathhouse, with its carefully controlled temperatures, natural light, and flowing water, was engineered to reduce stress, promote circulation, and strengthen community bonds. This was preventive medicine on a civic scale, an early recognition that the buildings we inhabit and the spaces we share play a direct and powerful role in our collective health, a principle that modern wellness architecture is only now relearning. Light itself became a sacred tool in the hands of ancient architects. They mastered the sun, choreographing its rays to paint stories and manifest the divine within their stone walls. Deep within an Egyptian temple like Karnak, hieroglyphs were not merely carved into walls. They were positioned with celestial precision. At a specific moment, perhaps on the pharaoh's birthday or a significant festival, a single beam of sunlight would pierce the temple's inner darkness, sliding across the inscribed walls to illuminate a particular name or a symbol of a god. This was not a chance event. It was a deliberate, timed revelation, a way of making the stone itself speak, affirming the ruler's divine connection through the medium of light. This required an astonishingly precise orientation of the entire building and the careful placement of small, strategic apertures to act as celestial spotlights. In the dim, incense-filled spaces of Byzantine churches, a different kind of light manipulation unfolded. Architects designed windows not for broad illumination, but to create pools of ethereal, filtered light. They used alabaster panes or angled the window openings so that light would strike golden mosaics at just the right angle, making the figures of saints and angels seem to shimmer and glow with an otherworldly radiance. The resulting interplay of brilliant light and deep shadow was not merely decorative. It was a direct representation of a theological concept, the duality of divine revelation and mystery, making the presence of God feel both imminent and unknowable. This was a sophisticated understanding of optics and human psychology. The builders had to predict the sun's path through every season, calculating angles of incidence and reflection to ensure their symbolic effects occurred exactly when needed. They treated light as a dynamic building material, as vital as the stone it touched, by transforming static architecture into an interactive, time-based experience. They created spaces that felt alive and responsive. A worshipper was not just observing a ritual, they were participating in a cosmic drama where the very sunlight became an actor, choreographed by an intelligence that saw the sun not just as a source of light, but as a partner in storytelling. Stone could be shaped to resist the slow, relentless pressure of time, but these builders also planned for nature's sudden, violent outbursts. The 35th sign of intelligence is a profound resilience to environmental stressors, where infrastructure was designed not just for daily use, but to endure catastrophic floods and punishing winds. In the floodplains of Mesopotamia, life depended on the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, but their annual floods were unpredictable and could wipe out entire harvests. The response was a landscape of human intelligence. Engineers constructed complex networks of irrigation canals to distribute water during dry periods, but they also built massive levees, earthen embankments designed to contain the rivers when they swelled beyond their banks. They dug diversion channels to safely route excess water away from settlements and into overflow basins. This was not a haphazard effort. It required a deep, practical hydrology, an understanding of river behavior, sedimentation, and seasonal rain patterns. The raised citadels and platforms of cities like Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley served the same purpose, lifting the heart of the city high above the reach of the most aggressive floodwaters. This was proactive risk management carved into the earth itself, the same forward-thinking logic applied to the invisible force of wind. In coastal regions, builders intuitively understood aerodynamics. They designed structures with rounded corners and lower profiles to help fierce winds flow around them rather than striking a flat, resistant surface. Foundations were dug deeper and wider, anchoring the entire building against the relentless push and pull of storm force gusts. This knowledge was not just technical. It was profoundly social. A levee is only as strong as the community that maintains it. These systems required constant, coordinated upkeep, dredging silt from canals and reinforcing earthen walls. This created a powerful incentive for cooperation, binding the community together with the shared goal of collective survival. The intelligence here is in the anticipation of disaster. These builders were not merely reacting to a flood after it happened. They were studying the patterns of the land and the sky, identifying vulnerabilities, and then weaving protective solutions directly into the fabric of their cities. This long-term perspective reduced their vulnerability dramatically, transforming a hostile environment into a manageable home. It ensured that their settlements were not just places to live, but resilient habitats capable of weathering generations of environmental pressure. A lesson in sustainable living that feels more relevant with each passing storm. The stones themselves could speak a secret language. A 36th sign of intelligence is found in the deliberate encoding of linguistic and numerical codes, transforming silent monuments into encrypted libraries. The Parthenon is not just a marvel of proportion. Its very dimensions are a lesson in Pythagorean numerology, where specific ratios were believed to hold mystical significance and reflect the harmony of the universe. The number of columns, the spacing between them, and the overall layout were not arbitrary. They were a mathematical hymn, a physical representation of a philosophical belief system that equated number with cosmic truth. This required architects who were also philosophers, capable of translating abstract numerical concepts into a built form that would silently teach its principles for centuries. Across the ocean, the Maya took this concept to its literal extreme. Their pyramids and stelae are covered in intricate glyphs, a complex writing system that recorded everything from royal genealogies and military victories to precise astronomical observations. This was not simple decoration. It was history and science carved in stone, a durable archive designed to outlast the fragile bark paper codices that could be destroyed by humidity or conflict. The intelligence here is multifaceted. It required advanced literacy, a class of scribes who could master the hundreds of distinct glyphs. It also demanded cryptographic thinking, a way of structuring information that could be understood by the educated elite but remained a mystery to the common populace or foreign invaders. This practice of embedding codes reveals a profound desire for legacy. These cultures understood that oral traditions could fade and that empires could fall. But a story carved into the side of a temple, or a mathematical constant built into the footprint of a shrine, could endure. They were making a conscious investment in the future, creating a fail-safe for their cultural memory. A building became more than a shelter or a temple. It became a time capsule, a message in a bottle addressed to whoever would come next, ensuring that their greatest discoveries and their deepest stories would never be completely lost to time. Their greatest monuments were not born in isolation, but from a vibrant conversation that spanned continents. The 37th sign of intelligence is this remarkable intercultural exchange, where architectural styles blended to create something entirely new and more powerful. As empires expanded through trade and conquest, they did not simply impose their own designs. They absorbed, adapted, and synthesized. In the bustling crossroads of Central Asia, Greek colonists following Alexander the Great encountered the profound spiritual traditions of Buddhism. The result was a breathtaking hybrid known as Greco-Buddhist art. For the first time, the Buddha was depicted in human form, and his statues bore the serene, idealized features and flowing drapery of a Greek god, carved with the technical skill of Hellenistic sculptors. This was more than a stylistic whim. It was a deliberate fusion that made a foreign philosophy visually accessible and emotionally resonant for a diverse population. The intelligence required for this was not just artistic. It demanded a diplomatic openness, a willingness to see value in the aesthetics and beliefs of another culture, and the technical adaptability to merge two distinct construction and carving traditions into a coherent whole. Meanwhile, in the cosmopolitan hub of Roman Egypt, architects in Alexandria seamlessly integrated local motifs into imperial blueprints. A temple might feature classic Roman columns and arches, but its inner sanctum would be adorned with traditional Egyptian hieroglyphs and depictions of the god Serapis, a deity who was himself a fusion of Greek and Egyptian gods. This cultural synthesis was a strategic masterstroke. By incorporating familiar local elements, the Romans fostered a sense of shared identity and reduced resistance to their rule. This cosmopolitan approach acted as a powerful engine for innovation. When a Roman engineer learned about the passive cooling techniques of a Persian windcatcher, or a Mesoamerican builder adopted a new type of mortar from a trading partner, the entire architectural vocabulary evolved. It proved that these ancient builders were not provincial traditionalists, but engaged participants in a global network of ideas. they understood that the most intelligent design is often a hybrid one, enriched by the collective genius of humanity and strengthened by its beautiful, enduring diversity. Your footsteps would have echoed along a path designed for transformation. This 38th sign of intelligence is found in the ceremonial procession, where a simple walk became a profound spiritual journey. In places like Teotihuacan, the Avenue of the Dead is far more than a street connecting the Pyramid of the Moon to the Ciudadela. It is a carefully engineered experience. A pilgrim did not just walk from point A to point B. They were guided on a gradual, deliberate ascent, their physical effort mirroring a spiritual climb. The route was punctuated by smaller platforms and temples, ritual stops that allowed for rest, reflection, and the building of immense anticipation before reaching the final, towering pyramids. This was psychological pacing carved into the landscape, a way of preparing the mind and body for an encounter with the divine. High in the mountains of Greece, the sacred way to the oracle at Delphi functioned on the same brilliant principles. The path wound its way up the slopes, offering pilgrims sudden, breathtaking vistas of the valley below at specific turns. These were not accidental views. They were strategically framed moments of awe, reminding travelers of the grandeur of the gods they were approaching and their own small place in the cosmos. The intelligence here is a deep understanding of human psychology and symbolic storytelling. The planners were not just moving people, they were choreographing emotion. They used the natural topography, enhancing it with man-made structures to create a sequence of revelation and concealment, of effort and reward. Every step was a sentence, every turn a new chapter in a story told not with words but with space, stone, and horizon. By structuring this interaction with the environment, they transformed a physical trek into a metaphysical passage. This structured journey reinforced a shared religious identity, uniting every pilgrim in a common, transformative experience that was as much about the path as it was about the destination. A space can feel right even before you understand why. This intuitive sense of harmony was not left to chance by ancient builders. They engineered it directly into the dimensions of their structures using rigorous proportional systems, a 39th sign of intelligence that applied mathematical order to three-dimensional forms. In the grand tradition of Indian temple architecture, the blueprint for creation was the Vastu Purusha Mandala. This was not a simple floor plan. It was a complex cosmic diagram, a square grid that partitioned space into precise, smaller squares, each one the domain of a specific deity or cosmic force. The temple's entire layout, from the outermost wall to the position of the inner sanctum, was determined by this sacred geometry. The intelligence here was both spiritual and deeply practical. This strict grid system created an inherent structural balance, distributing weight and stress evenly across the foundation. But its true purpose was to make the building a vessel of cosmic order, a physical place where the human and the divine could meet in perfect geometric harmony. Across the world, Roman architects pursued a similar goal with a different, equally brilliant system. They relied on modular planning, where every dimension of a building was based on the ratio of a central room or a standard measurement. A room's width would be 1.5 times its height, or its length would be a perfect double of its width. This arithmetic precision ensured that as a building grew in complexity, with its courtyards, colonnades, and chambers, every element felt connected, part of a single, cohesive whole. The rhythm was mathematical, but the effect was deeply human. To achieve this, a master builder needed more than a set of calculations. They required a refined aesthetic sense, an intuitive feel for how scale and proportion would be perceived by a person walking through the space. They understood that a room with a ceiling too high for its width feels cavernous and unsettling, while one that is too low feels cramped and oppressive. By finding the perfect balance, they created environments that felt naturally welcoming and profoundly peaceful. This pursuit of proportional beauty reveals a universal human desire. It is the drive to shape our world according to an underlying order, to make our infrastructure an active expression of balance, where every line and volume resonates with our deepest sense of what is right and beautiful. The final and perhaps most profound sign of intelligence is not found in a stone or a star alignment, but in the invisible chain of human connection that carried these skills across centuries. These monumental projects were never the work of a single brilliant mind, but the accumulated wisdom of countless generations, each one teaching the next. In ancient Egypt, a master mason did not keep his knowledge in a secret book. He took on a young apprentice, guiding the boy's hands as they learned to read the grain of the granite, to feel the precise angle for a chisel strike, and to understand the sacred geometry that governed their work. This was a living library where the information was stored in skilled hands and patient minds. The medieval stonemasons' guilds formalized this process, creating a structured path from apprentice to journeyman to master. To become a master, a craftsman had to produce a masterpiece, a physical demonstration that he had fully absorbed and could now advance the traditions of his teachers. This system was a powerful engine of quality control and cumulative innovation. Each generation did not have to rediscover the wheel. They stood on the shoulders of giants, refining the recipes for Roman concrete, improving the templates for Gothic arches, and perfecting the surveying techniques for aqueducts. This intergenerational dialogue required a sophisticated pedagogical intelligence. Masters had to break down immensely complex processes into teachable steps. They created symbolic models, small-scale prototypes in wood or clay that served as three-dimensional blueprints for the entire work crew. They developed oral rhymes and chants to memorize critical ratios and formulas, ensuring the knowledge was portable and resilient, surviving even if written records were lost to fire or war. This was a civilization's investment in its own future. It was a conscious choice to value continuity, to ensure that the hard-won insights into seismic resilience, water management, and celestial mechanics would not vanish with the fall of a dynasty or the outbreak of a conflict. The true legacy of this ancient intelligence, therefore, is not just the stone they left behind, but the enduring model they provide for us today. It is a reminder that our greatest infrastructure is not made of concrete and steel, but of knowledge itself, patiently passed from one open hand to the next, a sacred trust meant to build a better world for those who are yet to come. These 40 signs of intelligence are not isolated marvels. They are individual notes in a grand, harmonious symphony of human ingenuity. We see a civilization that refused to separate science from spirituality, viewing the movement of a planet and the flow of water as sacred texts written in a universal language. Their approach was not reactive but deeply proactive, building aqueducts for cities yet unbuilt and designing walls to withstand earthquakes that might not strike for 100 years. This was sustainability in its truest form, a commitment to creating systems that would nourish and protect countless future generations. They mastered their materials not by conquering nature, but by listening to it, learning the language of stone, the song of the wind, and the mathematics hidden within a tree's growth rings. This intelligence was never a single, rigid formula. It was a fluid, adaptable genius that expressed itself uniquely in the deserts of Egypt, the highlands of Peru, and the monsoon-swept plains of Cambodia. The same core principles of observation, resilience, and harmony took on different forms, perfectly suited to their local environment and cultural context. The most profound legacy is this fusion of the practical and the symbolic. A temple was a celestial clock, a sewer system was a public health manifesto. A city grid was a map of the cosmos. Every structure served an immediate, tangible purpose while simultaneously encoding a deeper story, a set of values, and a vision of humanity's place in the world. This challenges our modern tendency to compartmentalize, to see engineering as separate from art, and utility as divorced from meaning. The ancient blueprint suggests a different path, one where our infrastructure does not merely serve us, but also speaks to us, reminding us of who we are and what we value. In their holistic vision, we find a powerful invitation to reconsider our own relationship with the built world, to learn from the past not by copying its forms, but by embracing its integrative spirit for the complex challenges of our own time. Our journey through 40 signs of ancient brilliance reveals a breathtaking tapestry of human ingenuity. This was not a single discovery, but a global symphony of intellect, where civilizations separated by oceans and centuries arrived at similar, profound solutions. They understood the language of the stars and the physics of a trembling earth. They built cities that breathed and waterways that purified, weaving together practical necessity and spiritual meaning into a single, resilient whole. This legacy offers us more than just historical wonder. It provides a vital blueprint for our own future, as we confront the immense challenges of climate change and rapid urbanization. These ancient lessons in sustainability, community planning, and disaster resilience speak with a powerful and urgent voice. They remind us that true progress is not about conquering nature, but about learning to work in harmony with its immutable laws. The next time you walk through a city, look past the glass and steel. See the ancient principles hidden in plain sight, in the drainage grates that echo Mohenjo-Daro, in the grid of streets that mirrors a Roman camp, in the very idea that a public space should serve the health and connection of its people. Let this exploration be a starting point. What forgotten intelligence might be waiting in the oldest structure in your own town? Share the mysteries that capture your imagination in the comments below, and subscribe to continue unraveling history's greatest puzzles with us. Remember, the past is not a closed book. It is a living mentor, and its lessons are waiting for anyone willing